Good afternoon. We are here on the campus of Eastern New Mexico University, and we are talking about professional wrestling. So, let's start with the basic question of you want to be a professional wrestling writer. You want to work for the WWE, writing storylines. What are some of your favorite storylines happening, either some of your favorite storylines of all time or some of the favorite storylines happening right now that you would just say, this is something I would like to write?
Well, in my honest opinion, I think that the gimmick or the storyline that CM Punk recently had of his title reign of 431 days was just really compelling and really interesting, because no one in this day and age has had a championship for that long. And it brought meaning, it brought prestige back to the WWE title after it would get traded off maybe like after a month after somebody would win it, but to have it for that long was just really, really awesome. And it also helps that he's in my top 5 favorite wrestlers, not just because of his ability, but just because the way he works on the mic and everything about it is just really awesome. And let me think. Another one of my favorite storylines of all time, or just a gimmick rather, would be Randy Orton's Legend Killer gimmick that he ran with from 2003 to 2008. Mm-hmm. It's just going after Legend and solidifying himself as a main eventer. It makes him into the superstar he is today, and that's why he's one of the most profitable and one of the most marketable superstars that we have today, and why he's one of my favorite as well. Probably one of my favorite, my top 2 definitely.
Great. Yeah. Now, Roger, with that, I can say that historically speaking, the title, for example, Hulk Hogan held it for years and years and years. Bob Backlund held it for, I think, 4 years. Bruno
Sammartino held it for almost 8, I think. Yeah.
So when did the long reigns end before the recent?
That's a good question. That would be an appropriate question for someone who knows the history a little bit in more depth than I do. I would have to say maybe somewhere in the 1990s. I mean, would that be accurate? Somewhere in the early 90s, maybe you started to see less and less.
Yeah, I would think maybe like
the long-term title reigns.
The new millennium, like the 2000s and things like that, because nowadays, pro wrestling isn't just wrestling, it's about making profits, and it's a business. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, like, in order to draw revenue, they have to build it for the next pay-per-view. So, pay-per-views are every month. Yeah. So, in order to build suspense, obviously the title's going to change hands, and be like, oh, well, is he going to lose the title this month? How about this month? Mm-hmm. And it was just become a norm for wrestling fans to be like, oh, well, maybe, he's had it for 2 months, I think it's time for him to drop it. But going back to the point about CM Punk is that he held it for so long, it was actually worth something again. It made you pay attention and be like, oh, is he going to lose it this time? And a year and a half later, he still had it. And just recently now at the Royal Rumble is when he lost it to none other than The Rock, when he made his return to the WWE after 10 years.
I mean, in the last 15 years or so, I can only think of maybe 3 wrestlers or superstars, as the WWE calls them today, who have held the title for over a year. Mm-hmm. So it's fairly rare.
Yeah, it's rare, and that's what makes it so important.
Yeah, gone are the days of the old regional territories where, you know, someone like Ric Flair would have the title and would travel all over the country defending it in local areas, you know.
Now, you mentioned The Rock, the reigning champ now, which is for someone such as myself who would consider himself a casual fan at best, that's one of the names that the casual fans will know. So is it... can you tell a little bit about the story? Because he had left the WWE for years. Talk a little bit about kind of what brought him back.
Okay, well, what brought him back this time to acquire CM Punk's championship is that last year at WrestleMania, it was a once-in-a-lifetime match between him and John Cena, which The Rock won. And this time around for WrestleMania, they're going to have twice in a lifetime with him and John Cena, but this time it's going to be with the WWE Championship. Mm-hmm. So, with the WWE Championship in The Rock's possession, and with John Cena's current win at the last pay-per-view, it sets up for twice in a lifetime for the WWE Championship, Rock versus John Cena.
He comes from a wrestling family. His grandfather wrestled, his father wrestled, so I believe him when he says he's got it in his blood. You know, I mean, he uses it as a platform to go on and work for for Hollywood.
Sure.
Which, you know, why wouldn't you make that jump? It's not as dangerous.
Yeah, you make more money probably.
Make a lot more money.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's nice to see him back, even if it is for a temporary
temporary
run. Yeah.
Yeah.
He still got it.
Still, yeah.
He's the champ.
He's the champ.
Well,
The people's
People's
the
champ.
people's champ.
People's
Does he still have the people's elbow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The most electrifying move in sports entertainment.
You really know your stuff about this, don't you? Yeah,
I
this
try.
is serious business.
Well, let's talk a little bit, actually, more about you and the kind of why you're coming to ENMU and how you think that this can get you to your career goal.
Okay, well, for me, coming to ENMU just seemed almost like an easy choice because to the different universities and places that I went to, I almost felt like a statistic. I didn't feel like I was welcomed there, and it all comes down to where I would think I would succeed most. And coming here, I feel welcomed, and I feel like I would succeed most here because most of the time, I've always had trouble fitting in places and stuff like that, and I know, like, where I go, it's a different chapter of my life, and it's going to be one of the most important decisions that I make, and also seeing the different programs and stuff that you have here, it makes my goals seem that much more attainable, and personally, I think that I'll get to where I need to go and where I want to be as a writer for WWE by coming here and doing my best.
You want to work on the creative team? Is that what you... Okay.
Either the creative team or maybe just to be like an on-air announcer, the announcer's booth, kind of like JR and the King and stuff like that. I think that'd be awesome. Or even just like an in-ring announcer. I just want to work for them somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think.
Great. Well, that is our time today. I would like to thank our guests and say adieu.
Brother!